All right, Nuggets fans, welcome in to Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am ready to discuss the Denver Nuggets, who play tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks, and Giannis Antetokounmpo should be a fun matchup for sure. Apologies for being a little bit late, just had to take care of a couple of things, get some water. Somebody in the comments was talking about coffee. Dominic, I am already through my second mug. It's been a tough morning, but we are rolling through and excited to be here regardless. So thank you for being here, folks. Always appreciate everybody for stopping by, sharing their support, and we get to talk about the Nuggets. Get to talk about the Nuggets a little bit here. And I'm going to answer some questions because we're at that rare stage of the season where you actually get 2 days off. Now, of course, that is combated by the fact that Denver has a back-to-back on Thursday and Friday. Yay! But we roll. We have a good time. If you didn't get a chance, yesterday I was at Peckish, a restaurant in the DTC area that serves pizza and wings. Went with the MHS crew, recorded an hour for MHS Today. Had a good time there. Make sure to check out that episode yesterday, MHS Today on Mile High Sports. And make sure to check out Peckish, of course. They are pretty cool, good people over there, and they serve even better food. So always have fun over there. We will get into all of the questions and do my best in the first couple of segments. Third segment, we will do a Nuggets Bucks preview. But really quickly, this podcast, as you know, it's brought to you by the good folks over at BetOnline, your number one source for everything online betting in 2025. You could be a first-time bettor. You could be a seasoned fan. No matter what, BetOnline, they are your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA to college basketball to NHL, UFC, and more. They're your number one sports betting source. So with every three-pointer and hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more. Head over to their website, betonline.ag. BetOnline, the game starts here. Cedric with the super chat. Just drink, and maybe the Nuggets will win, Ryan. LOL. I appreciate it, man. It's always great, and trying to be a little bit more hydrated. Yesterday was a bad day for hydration. My brother and I got Mexican food, and that of course has to pair with a margarita. So definitely made that happen. AG, not sure what AG is about here, but I don't think that he's on the injury report. He's probable, or at least he was probable the last time I checked on him. We'll talk about it in a little bit, and maybe during the break I will pull up the injury report for the Nuggets. Oh, betonline.ag. That's the website for BetOnline. That's their tag at the. It's not .com. It's .ag. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, I've got some questions to answer in this chat. I asked for questions online yesterday and was met with some good ones. So I'm going to make sure to go over several of those now. Use the first two segments, probably about 30 minutes worth of time, just answering some questions, have some fun with it. Some of them were doubled up, but I've got about 14, 15 questions here. If you have other questions, don't hesitate. Throw them in the chat, and I will try to answer as many as I can during this episode. But let's get into it first, starting with Garrett. Do you think we will be better or worse next year? I think we should be better. No reason all the young guys shouldn't be better, and the core four should be about the same. First of all, let me try to change the style of this. Does that look better? That I think reads a little bit better than the other one. So we'll start with this. Will the Nuggets be better or worse next year? Kind of a cop-out. I think they'll be about the same unless they change their core. The fact of the matter is that Jokic, best player in the world, doesn't really look like that's going to change that much anytime soon. Like, even if he's not the best player in the world, it's because he's probably the second or third best player in the world. And once you get up to that point, it's about how everybody around you can sort of accentuate what you are doing. So I think that what Denver would have is that as long as their 2 through 4 stays the same, I don't really expect their 5 through 9 to really change that much. Maybe there's some moves on the margins, but again, those are margin moves for a reason. Denver usually finds ways to account for those other fringe pieces. And as we've seen with guys like Jalen Pickett and Zeke Nnaji this year, you can find contributions from unexpected places if you fill out the rotation in a reasonable way. So I think they're going to be about the same. And the question I think you're really getting to, you think the guys should be better because of the young players. And while I do think that Peyton Watson will improve a bunch, Julian Strawther will take some steps forward, some of the other guys like Deron Holmes will be in the rotation as well, and that should help Denver in some ways. I do also think that because like when you introduce Deron Holmes, there are going to be some weaknesses there. He's going to be coming back from an Achilles injury, and also just the inexperience factor is definitely a thing. So I think it's fair to have them at about the same. Like if Denver wins 54 games this year, which I think they're about on pace for, I would predict them to win about 54 games next year and to have about the 4th or 5th highest net rating in the NBA. It doesn't mean that they are like top tier. It doesn't mean that they are a second tier team. Like I still think that they're kind of in the middle of those two areas, which is, it's tough when you're evaluating it because they're clearly not the favorites. And maybe there's something that they could do to change that. I think it would take one of those young guys to take a major step forward because I don't think that Christian Braun is going to be that much better in the 4th year than he has been this year. Like maybe there are some things that he can do a little bit differently, but I don't really see it. I think he is mostly what he is, and that is a solid starter. Probably not going to be that much more than a solid starter. Thomas asks, is there even a realistic balance of adding in positional defenders like P-Watt and Zeke next to Jokic while not cratering the offensive output? Good question. This is one of those that if you're a Nuggets fan, you're always thinking about the ways that Denver can become the best possible defense that they can be while not giving up enough on the offensive end to make it like meaningless. Because you want Denver, because with Jokic, you have a ticket to a top 5 offense pretty much automatically. The only question is how you use it, what you do with that, and if you turn that top 5 offense into a top 10 offense because you turned the top 20 defense into a top 10 defense, is that a net positive? I don't know. I think the numbers that Denver's putting up right now, despite the fact that they rank 20th defensively, because they have so many great offensive players, the factor is that like they're still winning by about the same margin. Maybe even more so because their offense is so good this year. The only team that's better is the historically great Cleveland Cavaliers offense. So I don't know. I don't know the answer here. P-Watt and Zeke, like Zeke's shooting has been better than I expected for it to be. P-Watt is still like, there's still some things that I need to see from him, and we'll talk about him in just a little bit here. But there are still some things that I need to see from him for growth purposes, for getting better, for getting a little bit more comfortable. It's been a little bit since we've watched him. It's also been a little bit since he's had a major game for the Nuggets from an offensive perspective. Like I'm just going to go back through the let me just go back through the game logs here. See if there's like the most recent strong scoring performance that he had. 10 points on January 15th, 14 points if you go back to January 7th against Boston, which is fine. He had 11 against Atlanta, 13 against Utah, 18 against Detroit, 14 against the Clippers. And then you're back in mid-December by that point. And then with the assists, like he's in the 1 to 3 range pretty much all the time, except for 5 against Brooklyn when he played 34 minutes. So the overall level of production and impact that you're getting on the offensive end from Peyton Watson is not super high. The role is not that high, and there's still plenty of room for him to grow. I wouldn't say that there isn't, but I am at least a little bit concerned about what playing him consistently would look like in Denver's looks. Now, the theory is, of course, there. I love the idea of a Jamal Murray, Peyton Watson, Michael Porter, Zeke Nnaji, Nikola Jokic lineup. Zeke is even a little bit more mobile right now than Aaron Gordon, and Peyton Watson is your big wing, your big kind of guard that can defend at the point of attack and switch and do a bunch of different things, be a help defender. So there is something to it. The question is whether Michael Malone will get to that. That's a lineup that I would love to see when they come back. It's also a way to play both Peyton Watson and Zeke Nnaji at the same time. And then you might be able to answer your own question, whether the defensive output can be good while not cratering the offense. It's a good question. Hey, we've got a super chat here from Mike. I actually don't know that currency, but it looks nice. It's shining yellow. Appreciate it. What do the Nuggets do in a playoff series if both Russ and Julian get played off the court? That is a great question. It is a great question. There's banging going on outside my apartment because I live right next to the entry door for our apartment complex. Great, fantastic. If Russ and Julian get played off the court, you've seen some signs, right? You've seen some signs with Russ, especially in these last 3 games, looking a little bit shaky, looking a little bit iffy in terms of decision making, shot making, creation, and some of the turnovers that he's accumulated in this past time. And then with Julian, the answer is pretty obvious. Like defensively, that could be a major problem for them. If they both get played off the court, I mean, you kind of have to play some guards, right? So who would play in their place? Do you go to Jalen Pickett? Do you go to Peyton Watson? I think could play in big lineups. That I think would be the way that I think that they would go. Is they'd play Peyton Watson, Zeke Nnaji, and I guess that's it. Maybe some DeAndre Jordan for bench center minutes, but then you're playing super big. And while there is some merit to that, your defense probably isn't going to be good enough to make up for the problems that you're going to face offensively when you play in a playoff series all 3 of Peyton Watson, Zeke Nnaji, and DeAndre Jordan. That's going to be tough. But it's a great question. Like if they both get played off the court, the real answer here is that they probably lose. Like one of those guys needs to be playable because Denver doesn't have the guard depth in order to make that happen. Maybe Jalen Pickett does get an opportunity and they try to go with him, but I'd be concerned about that. It's a good question, Mike, and it is possible. I don't want to write it off. There are teams like the Thunder that I think could really make life difficult for both Russ and Julian. So we'll see what happens there. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. Let's answer one more before we get out of here. Or not get out of here, but like before we take a break. I'll skip that one and come back to it. Broke for William. Please make the case for Watson over Strother off of the bench. Vice versa, and what side you lean towards / should the team be hyper flexible with those two? Okay, so basically, I'm guessing this is more playoff related. Watson, Strother, both, or neither? And the answer is probably both. I think there is a real world, and I'm not going to make the strong case either way, I guess. I think there's a real world where both of those guys average about 10 minutes per game in a playoff series. I think that with Watson coming back He was playing 24 minutes per game beforehand, and there was a reason for that. The defensive consistency, the ability to make up for others' mistakes, the length and athleticism, and the developmental opportunity that he has as a third-year player who's only 22. Strother is in much the same vein. He's a little bit older, but not by much. And what he does on a consistent basis, I think, of spacing the floor, providing relief on the offensive end for guys like Jokic and Murray, that's definitely notable to me. He has the talent to change a series. He has the talent to change a game and, by definition, change a series with his ability to score. And sometimes it might just take 6 minutes. It might take 8 minutes in order for him to do that. And then if that's the case, then you're going to really be happy that Denver stuck with him if he goes on a personal 8-0 run to turn what was a 6-point deficit into a 2-point lead against the OKC Thunder. And that may not happen, but it also might. I think that there is a real scenario where it could happen. So the cop-out answer is that Michael Malone is going to be very limiting with those two. I think that we are trending towards Westbrook being the primary sixth man and Watson and Strother being more situational guys, while the others are all basically playing 35 to 40 minutes a night. And that includes Michael Porter, it includes Christian Brown, and it, of course, includes Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, and Nikola Jokic. So it will be very interesting to see how they handle it, but that would be my take. They will probably be very flexible with those two. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to chat about some more questions, and I see some others popping up in the chat, so I will do my best to get around to those folks. Don't you worry. We'll be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I'm a little bit out of breath lately. I know people are going to naturally go to the other direction on that, but I think I might have a food allergy to the chocolate covered almonds that I've been having lately. For whatever reason, every time I have those, I'm just like, and then I podcast and I get more out of breath. Like I've eaten food before. So it's a little bit weird. So sorry if I'm a little bit out of breath. I'm probably going to go to the doctor at some point and see if I've got a food allergy. It's my only food allergy that I've ever known about. So it's a new experience for your boy. All right, let's get into this. Let's talk about a little bit more of these topics. I'm trying to make sure to see. Oh, hey, Danny Bailey's in the chat. I missed that comment earlier. What's up, Danny? How you doing, my guy? Good to see you yesterday. All right. Tucker the Baptist asks, Michael Porter Jr. should be moved in the offseason? ? I don't really know how to answer that. Everything is contextual. For those that love to painfully remind me, I was lauding for the Zach LaVine trade for the Nuggets and the idea that Zach LaVine would change some of Denver's fortunes. That was before Jamal Murray really turned his season around. And it was also it was less about Michael Porter and what he was providing, because I think Zach LaVine's very, very good and could provide some of the same things. But it was also just more about the fact that Jamal wasn't getting done what he needed to do. And that was really affecting everything that the Nuggets were doing. Now, Jamal looks great. Jamal looks like a player. He looks like the guy that the Nuggets need him to be in the playoffs. We'll see what happens when the actual playoffs roll around. But I do think that, in general, the Nuggets will have a lot of questions to answer after these playoffs if they fail, and if like Mike kind of fades into the background in a lot of these games again. Because he's averaging 19 points a game. He should be a factor for the Nuggets on a consistent basis. He's a guy that the Nuggets have put a lot of stock into over the course of this stretch. But the reality that they're facing is that if they have to change something, he is the likely guy that they change because they did just sign Murray and Gordon to those extensions. So should he be moved? I don't know. We need more context for how the rest of the season goes. If it goes great, they probably shouldn't change a thing. If it goes poorly, then they'll need to change something if they want to change their fortunes. So I can't answer it clearly at this point. I feel like I know the direction that we're going to go, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse now after the trade deadline. The ship has sailed. I think it's important to see this through with this current group. All right, let's get back to this. McFly Williams, what first-round opponent would you like the most for the Nuggets? This is a great question because too often we're looking at some of these other teams, looking at the top teams in the West and what they do, what they're looking like on a consistent basis. OKC, they won last night. They're 47-11. They've got a 9-game lead on the Nuggets. They're not going to face the Nuggets in the first round. Memphis is the 2 seed, tied with the Nuggets at the 3 seed. They're both 38-20. They are not going to be the opponent for the Nuggets. And by the way, I was talking to Matt Moore about this, and I had to ask, I was like, hey, why are the Nuggets the 3 seed with Memphis when they have the same head-to-head record and Denver has a better conference record? Isn't that the next tiebreaker? No, that's not the next tiebreaker. The next tiebreaker after head-to-head record is division winner. And because OKC is so far ahead of everybody, Denver's going to lose on a division winner tiebreaker against Memphis, Houston, the Lakers, the Clippers if they jump up. They won't lose it against Minnesota. Although if Minnesota and Denver ties, then they're in the Northwest at the same time. So it's a tough place for Denver to be. OKC is so good that they're screwing up their seeding for that reason. So that's going to be tough. Denver's got to compete for that reason. I'm not answering the question. Right now, at the 3 seed, Denver would face the 6-seeded LA Clippers. Would that be a tough matchup? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. The Clippers are that team that is going to be annoying because of their shot making at times, because Harden's going to foul bait, because like they can create some open shots and will make enough open shots at times to win some games. Kawhi Leonard is back, not fully back, but he is present a little bit more. That would be a matchup that I think Denver can and should win, but also it's one that they're 2-2 against earlier this season, and that was without Kawhi. Denver hasn't even seen Kawhi yet this year. So I'm curious to see how it would go, but I do think that Denver would be okay in that one. Now, the Lakers are 5th somehow because they've won 3 in a row. They've won 8 of their last 10. If they were to drop to 6, but they're not going to drop to 6 because as I'm looking at the standings right now, they have 21 losses. The Clippers have 26. So if Denver stays at that 2 or 3 seed, they're likely to face the team that's either 6 or 7. The Clippers, the Timberwolves, the Warriors are all effectively tied right now. And you could throw in the Dallas Mavericks at 31-28, I guess. And even the Kings, who are 6-4 in their last 10 and have started to figure some things out, are 30-28. So between the Clippers, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, the Mavericks, and the Kings, those are the 5 teams that I think are most likely for Denver to face in the first round. I will say that of those 5, the Kings would be the easiest matchup. I think that Denver just, when they get serious, they'll figure out a way to slow down the Kings. they'll win that series. And then I think the Clippers is probably the second easiest matchup of those. The Warriors is probably the third easiest matchup. I'm not scared of that team. Yes, they have Jimmy Butler now, in addition to Steph Curry and Draymond Green. I just don't really care. Like, they'll be tough for a variety of other reasons. But Denver will be able to score on the inside. They'll draw a bunch of fouls. Jokic will be a challenge for them on a consistent basis. 4, Dallas Mavericks. They'll have a tough defense, especially if Anthony Davis plays. But they're not as tough as Minnesota, who just has Denver's number until proven otherwise. They are the toughest matchup of that group of 5. And the Suns are outside of that group because they have 31 losses at this point. They are 2-8 in their last 10 games. I don't think you have to worry about the Suns. Not that any Nuggets fans actually were. So kind of hilarious how that has really changed a lot over the course of this past couple of years. But yeah, Kings easiest, Clippers second easiest, Warriors third, Dallas fourth, Minnesota fifth. That would be my ranking of those particular teams for matchups with Denver, not just overall talent, but specifically matchups with Denver. Rob says, what's one thing that you would like to see from the Nuggets to make you feel confident about a long playoff run? It's a good question. It's one that, like, everybody knows that I'm a little bit skeptical, and it's hard for me to fake being positive because I just don't necessarily feel that way. If I were to be confident about the Nuggets, I want to see them perform well against the OKC. I want to see them perform well against OKC on March 9th and March 10th. I do not want to see Denver get blown out in either of those games. And I know OKC can do that. They can absolutely do that in a regular season. Is a regular season game going to define how Denver does? No. But if Denver looks extremely flawed, if they look overwhelmed, if they look like they can't handle the pressure that OKC throws their way on March 9th and March 10th in those back-to-back days, then I just don't think that Denver will be able to get through them. I don't have any reason to believe that they will, given how good OKC is statistically, but also how great their defense is overall. Like, they have the exact formula that you would be looking to kind of match up against Denver. They've got a bunch of dogs that you face off against Murray and you just run them relentlessly at him. And then they've got multiple bigs that you can throw at Jokic, including Chet Holmgren, who is that rim-roving big man who doesn't have to play on Jokic on a consistent basis. They can throw Hartenstein his way, and he'll be able to. I think that duo will challenge Jokic in a lot of ways that people don't fully appreciate yet. It'll be a lot like Minnesota. So if Denver can find a way to navigate that, if they can perform well in those situations, then I'll have a lot more confidence. If they can't, then I know that they're just going to struggle against that formula. That's just how it's going to be. Whether they they could lose those games and still win a title. I'm not going to sit here and say that they can't, but my belief in them will diminish a little bit if they just kind of fold in those situations and don't really have an answer for that. So we'll see. We'll see what it looks like, but that would definitely give me a lot more confidence in them if they actually performed well in those games. They don't have to, again, to win a championship. But I just look at that matchup and I get very nervous for how the Nuggets are going to perform. All right, one more question before we hit a break. Ivana asks, what would be the ideal path for the Nuggets to be able to get to the finals? And which East opponent is our best matchup for said finals? Another good question. I think, again, so if we're trying to be get this to be as easy for Denver as possible. Let's say actually this is a pretty good example of how it would look. OKC at the 1, Memphis at the 2, Denver at the 3, Houston at 4. Lakers at 5, Clippers at 6, T-Wolves at 7, Warriors at 8, Mavericks at 9, Kings at 10. That's what the standings looks like currently. So let's say Minnesota and Golden State move on. OKC has to face Golden State in the first round. Maybe Golden State scares them a little bit. It's not like a 4-0 sweep or anything like that. Maybe it's like a 4-2 kind of thing. And then everybody kind of moves on naturally. Denver faces the Clippers. They get through that. It's a challenging 5-game series, but it's a 5-game series. And Denver gets a little bit of rest before they face the Grizzlies, who have to struggle against the Minnesota Timberwolves, who they've struggled against before. I think that Memphis, even though that they had home court against Denver, I don't think that's a big deal. I think that Denver can go into Memphis and win game 1. And if they don't, I think they could win game 2. And then Denver comes back home and they win that series in 6. They win their home games in that situation. Say they win games 1, 3, 4, and 6. And then, hypothetically, the Lakers are the team that outlasts the Rockets. And then they beat OKC. That would be the ideal situation, is that Denver doesn't have to face OKC at all. It would mean that Denver faces the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, and that would be stressful, especially with the way that this most recent matchup went. But I got to be honest, man. Like, Denver in that situation, being in the Western Conference Finals, I don't think the Lakers could play the same exhausting defensive scheme that they had played on a random one-off game in February when everybody's relatively fresh after the All-Star break. I don't think they could handle that for a full 7 games. So if the Lakers were able to take down OKC, then great. That'll be awesome. I don't know if they can do that this time. I don't know if they're still capable of that, but if Denver were to go through the Lakers, the Grizzlies, and the Clippers, the Grizzlies, and the Lakers in order, and then get to the NBA Finals, that wouldn't surprise me. It would surprise me if they got through the Thunder, but again, this is the ideal situation. So I think those 3 would be a pretty good match for Denver. And then you'd probably want to face, the Cavs are a tough matchup for Denver. The Knicks are a tough matchup for Denver. Do you want to face the Celtics? Maybe you want to face the Bucks. Maybe the Bucks is the right call here. Like, I don't think that Milwaukee's going to go to the NBA Finals. I think they've got too many weaknesses. But what if they did? What if Giannis just put the team on his back and you've got Damian Lillard providing the extra scoring, and then you've got other guys that are providing defense and help and shooting and spacing? Can they get to the NBA Finals with that? Probably not. That's not viable. So I think the answer is probably Boston. I think Denver can get through Boston. I think they can. I am not as scared of a Boston matchup. Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay. Joe Mazzoul is in the comments and saying, as a Celtics fan, I'm glad Booth ruined your franchise. Now we have to worry about you guys. Now we don't have to worry about you guys. Have fun with Darius Arch and Hunter Tyson. All right. We'll see. We'll see what it looks like there. All I know is that the Celtics are they're still extremely worried if they see Jokic on the other side. You know what Jason Tatum has said. You know what everybody else has said. You know that they're still worried about the Nuggets. They are not really worried about any other team except the OKC Thunder. So if you see OKC or Denver on the other side of your Boston, you're a little nervous. So that would be the ideal path. Would be Denver going to Boston, getting one of the first 2 games, and then trying to win that series in 6 if they can. I don't see what Boston can do to Jokic. That's for sure. A little bit different. If little bit different. If you're facing the Cavs, who have, as Himmis says here, 2 quick guards and 2 bigs to throw at Jokic, cool with Boston. I think I agree. I think I definitely agree. All right, but yeah, that's my ideal path. And that's going to do it for the questions for now. I've still got some others that I might save for a future episode. So if I ever get to a break point, then I'll come back to these. So if your question did not get answered, sorry, just running out of time here. We're 35 minutes in. I'm going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to do a Nuggets Bucks preview really quickly for tonight, a national TV game, one of the first in this matchup in quite a bit. We'll be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. Back at it, Pickaxe and Roll, final segment here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Always appreciate the love and support. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. All right. National TV game tonight. Nuggets, I hope that they forget that it's a national TV game because boy, howdy, do the Nuggets suck on national TV and have been for a while. Like, I do not remember the last time they won on national TV this year. Now, I'm at the arena for the home games, so not sure how many of those games were actually on like national TV versus regular TV, or at least I don't really remember. So if somebody could do the digging for me, then make sure to check out the last game that Denver actually won on national TV. I think Nolan says Dallas here. Yeah, that makes sense. Back in like what, mid-January? It's been over a month. Good Lord, man. That's crazy. You're right. I do remember the Murray 45 piece and how they were talking about it on national TV. It was a big deal. I think every national broadcaster at that point was kind of shocked that that was happening. So like they didn't fully acknowledge it in the moment, how crazy it was, but it was a crazy moment. Oh, that was the one where Shaq was just like, oh yeah, I was motivating Jamal, doing my thing. He responded. I called him out. He answered. Something like that. Sorry, that's a bad Shaq impression, but he yeah. It's not fantastic. All right, Nuggets Bucks. Giannis versus Jokic is always fun. That is, I think, an important part of this. It's very rare that you get to see the best and second best player play against each other when they are in different conferences. And it's actually been rare still that this matchup just has not happened a bunch on national TV. I believe that this is the second time ever that this is a national TV game. And that's crazy to me because these have been the best and second best player in the NBA for the better part of the last 5-6 years. Like that's insane. But hey, it's better late than never, I guess. I wrote about this a little bit on Mile High Sports, so make sure to go check out the article if you missed it. Posted that about, I want to say, a couple hours ago. The key for this game for Denver, more so than stopping Giannis, is making sure to prevent the Bucks from getting up threes. They've got a bunch of capable three-point shooters. Everybody knows about Damian Lillard. Everybody knows about Brook Lopez. Taurean Prince is shooting extremely well. People even know about that because he's been competing with Jokic for the top three-point percentage in the NBA. But AJ Green off their bench is very good. Gary Trent Jr. is very good. They just traded for Kyle Kuzma. He is not having a good three-point season, but a little bit different to be getting shots from Milwaukee as opposed to Washington. So I think that there are plenty of opportunities for the Bucks to space the floor around Giannis and to take advantage. Basically, this season, the Bucks have a 22-8 record when they hit at least 14 threes. They have a 29-10 record when they shoot 35% or better. 35% is not a crazy number. Like, that's a pretty reasonable number for a lot of teams. So if they get going from a spacing perspective, that's pretty much all she wrote for this particular team. Usually they just rely on Giannis for their interior scoring. And that is, I mean, if you just get Giannis by himself scoring, when he puts up 30 points or more, they're only 15 and 13. They're basically like 500. It's when they shoot that they're actually really special. So I'm watching that. I'm watching Jamal Murray versus Damian Lillard. I always enjoy the Murray versus Lillard matchup. Those guys go off. They really try to match up with each other and play pretty well. Last year, it didn't work out as well. But in general, those guys, when they play against each other, they often shine. Murray especially has taken that matchup multiple times in the last few years. The number of the day from the article was 124.4 since entering the NBA. This is a direct quote from the article. Nikola Jokic has achieved 124.4 win shares in his NBA career. During that stretch, he leads the entire NBA. The next highest is Giannis at 108.6. 124, by the way, ranks 48th all time. Like straight up. Now, the higher you get, you get a little bit of separation, but then once you get up to those really high numbers, like only I think 11 guys, maybe 10 all time have ever had 200 win shares. Jokic is on pace for that if he wants to play 16, 17 years. I don't know if he's going to want to do that. Maybe he does. Maybe he'll be great enough. Maybe that's something that he'll want to do. If you're a Nuggets fan, you want to see him sign that $500 million supermax that is going to happen at some point. That would be great. But if he's able to do that, then it's the reason why I brought that up for what it's worth. So many people, when Giannis won their MVP, when Giannis won his first MVP back in 2019, so many Nuggets folks were like, holy cow, if only we had a player like that. If only Jokic could get to that place. If only Murray could get to that place. Like maybe Jokic could. He's got some great numbers. That was the 2018-19 season. I think Jokic finished fourth at MVP. I think if Nuggets fans were honest with themselves, they'd be like, okay, probably not going to get to that place. But who knows? As it turns out, he did get to that place, and then he surpassed Giannis. And he's had more career win shares than Giannis has had. And this is just like statistically, but he's had 3 MVPs. He has a finals MVP. He has like crazy stats. And he's had crazy amounts of wins. I think there's a lot of credit that can be given for Jokic. And most people think that he's surpassed Giannis at this stage of his career, which is crazy. So those guys have had parallel NBA careers, I'll say. Like one in the East, one in the West, both for mid-market teams, nothing crazy. Both have won championships, both have won multiple MVPs. One of them's more of a athletic defensive type. One of them is a savant on the offensive end. But it's always interesting to see those two go up against each other. The Serbia-Greece matchups in the offseason, when those two teams are playing against each other, those are often excellent. And it's always a great opportunity because you never know when you're going to not see it again. Like how many people feel about LeBron versus Steph, or LeBron versus KD, or KD versus Steph. That's how I feel, and that's how many Nuggets fans feel about Jokic versus Giannis. People don't feel that way about Jokic versus Embiid because it's too toxic. And it's also just very one-sided in that Embiid played the games that only he cared about, that only he was able to play, and now he's too hurt, and now it just kind of feels sad. And Nuggets fans don't feel that way about Doncic either, because he didn't come into the league at the same time. He plays a different position and just feels different. So the Jokic versus Giannis matchups are like the LeBron versus KD matchups for the previous generation. It's interesting to think about that. Interesting to think about their place in the NBA. Those guys will probably both go down as top 15 or so players of all time. And Jokic has an opportunity to get even higher if the longevity and if he has another MVP. Like if both of those go together, cooking with gas at that point. I think tonight Denver's probably going to win. They're favored. They have a good matchup here. I think both Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter will show up. I think Jamal Murray will be pretty good too. The question is whether Jokic will be his normal Jokic self, or if the Bucks will be able to take advantage of him on the defensive end, maybe draw some fouls. Maybe Brook Lopez really spreads the floor and hits 5 threes and makes it a tough contest for Denver. But I do think that Jokic will ultimately rise to that challenge, and I think the Nuggets are in a pretty good place. So we will see what they can do, but I am certainly looking forward to this game. It should be a lot of fun. All right, everybody, that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Again, I'll get to some other Q&A questions at some point, but I do appreciate those for stopping by and for bringing up some of those questions in chat. Always appreciate chatting with you folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the game tonight. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.